MARTell Holt has never been the kind of man to hide his emotions. Whatever he feels, you see it in his face and hear it in his voice. But lately, there's been something different about him. The fire in his eyes has been burning hotter than ever, and everyone around him can feel it. Something has shifted inside him, and that change leads back to one name: Hill Harper. The moment MARTell discovered Melody's hidden connection to the actor and author, everything flipped upside down. At first, it might not sound like a big deal to outsiders. Hill Harper is known for being polished, smart, well-spoken, and respected. Melody has always carried more layers to her life than people realize, so on the surface, the two crossing paths didn't immediately scream trouble. But for MARTell, it landed like a gut punch. This wasn't just a casual encounter at some event. This was something deeper, something kept quiet, and most painfully something hidden from him. For MARTell, the problem wasn't only about the connection itself. It was about how he found out. He didn't hear it from Melody. He didn't hear it directly from Hill. Instead, he pieced it together from whispers, hints, and subtle social media posts. That's what hurt him the most. It wasn't just secrecy, it was betrayal wrapped in silence. And this wasn't the first time MARTell's trust had been tested. His history with Melody has already been full of scars and broken promises. But this time, the wound cut differently. It wasn't just about lies, it felt strategic, like something carefully built outside his reach. That thought made him restless, pacing his home at night, trying to figure out what it all really meant. From the outside, Melody has been slowly carving out her independence. She's faced the pressures of public judgment, the challenges of single motherhood, and the battles of rebuilding her image after heartbreak. To many, she's looked like a woman rising above it all. But when rumors began swirling that she and Hill Harper had been in close contact, sharing late-night texts, private meetups, and deep conversations, it left everyone wondering if this was about friendship, strategy, or something more intimate. The way MARTell found out only fueled his anger. A friend of a friend casually dropped Hill's name in connection with Melody. At first, MARTell brushed it off, but when that same name kept surfacing, his suspicions grew. Finally, when he confronted Melody, her answers only left him more unsettled. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it. She just left it vague. And to a man like MARTell, that silence felt louder than any confession. In his eyes, it was proof that something was being hidden. What made it worse was Hill Harper's involvement. Instead of stepping back, Hill reportedly tried to calm the storm. People close to the situation say he even reached out to explain himself. But MARTell wasn't looking for explanations. He wasn't looking for a polite conversation. He wanted loyalty, and in his mind, neither Hill nor Melody gave him that. As expected, once whispers turned into chatter, social media grabbed hold of the story. Suddenly, every cryptic caption, every deleted post, every side-eye comment from friends became part of the investigation. Speculation spread quickly. Were Melody and Hill just friends? Was it emotional support? Was it professional collaboration? Or was there something romantic forming? Nobody could say for sure. And MARTell wasn't offering clarity. He was furious, and that fury only made people wonder more. Things reached a breaking point at a private gathering. Sources say MARTell confronted Melody openly in front of others, his voice sharp, his emotions spilling out. Words like betrayal, dishonesty, and disrespect cut through the air. What was once a private wound became a public spectacle. And in the middle of it, Melody stood calm, almost too calm. She didn't shout back. She didn't fold. She held her ground. The questions swirled around her. Why didn't she tell MARTell from the beginning? Was she hiding something, or simply keeping something personal away from his judgment? Nobody had the answers. But one thing was certain: whatever this connection was, it shook MARTell to the core. As MARTell dug deeper, the truth only got heavier. The bond between Melody and Hill wasn't new, it had been growing for months, maybe even longer. And it wasn't just casual texts. Melody had been leaning on Hill during one of the hardest chapters of her life. They weren't only talking about struggles, they were building something emotional, professional, or both. And then came the twist MARTell never expected. Rumors suggested a third person was also involved. Someone respected, someone with influence. Whispers spread that this wasn't just about Melody finding comfort, it was about strategy. A possible alliance forming right under his nose, leaving him completely out of the loop. That realization hit him harder than anything else. It wasn't just about jealousy anymore. It was about power, control, and identity. MARTell felt like he was being erased from a story he once dominated. Melody wasn't just moving on, she was rewriting the narrative. And Hill, whether intentionally or not, was becoming part of that rewrite. Close friends say MARTell began questioning everything: his place in her life, his role as a father, even his image in the public eye. He wondered if Hill was stepping into spaces he once occupied, not only as a supporter but as someone influencing her choices and guiding her next moves. To MARTell, that wasn't just painful, it was humiliating. Meanwhile, Melody's public presence only grew stronger. Her posts carried confidence, her interviews felt more polished, and her smile looked brighter. To her supporters, she appeared empowered, standing tall after years of being overshadowed. But to MARTell, every new step she took felt like a dagger. In his mind, she wasn't just healing, she was erasing him, replacing him, and doing it all with a smile. Hill, on the other hand, stayed quiet in the public eye. No statements, no tweets, no messy exchanges. But insiders whispered that behind the scenes, he was deeply involved, advising Melody, encouraging her, and teaching her how to navigate storms with grace. And that was the final straw for MARTell. The thought of another man shaping Melody's decisions, shaping the story of their lives, drove him to the edge. The fallout was immediate. Their entire circle felt the crack. Friends were forced to pick sides. Some said MARTell was overreacting, too emotional to accept change. Others believed he had every right to feel betrayed, that this wasn't just a secret friendship, but a calculated move that cut him out completely. And through it all, MARTell grew quieter. No interviews. No social media rants. No explanations. He pulled back, waiting, watching, determined to uncover the full truth. But underneath that silence, there was something else: a hunger for answers, and maybe even for revenge. While MARTell spiraled, Melody sat in her living room, scrolling past messages she had no desire to answer. Screenshots, gossip, assumptions, all of it flying across her phone. But to her, this wasn't chaos. It was clarity. For the first time, she saw the lines clearly drawn. For years, she had walked on eggshells around MARTell, balancing his moods, his expectations, his version of loyalty. But with Hill, it was different. He listened without judgment. He offered advice without control. And that made Melody hold on, quietly, maybe too quietly. To her, this wasn't about romance. It wasn't about sneaking behind MARTell's back for love. It was about survival. Hill gave her something MARTell never did: confidence, peace, and the belief that she could stand on her own. While MARTell saw betrayal, Melody saw freedom. While he saw secrets, she saw strength. Still, Melody never imagined it would explode this way. She wasn't trying to light a fire. But once the truth, or at least whispers of it, slipped out, the flames spread faster than either of them could control. And now, the damage is done. MARTell feels broken, Melody feels liberated, and Hill stands quietly in the middle, unshaken by the noise. But one thing is certain: their story is far from over. This is just the beginning of a storm that no one can fully predict. MARTell wasn't just upset, he was unraveling. The anger wasn't quiet anymore, it had turned into restless energy. He made late-night phone calls, asking questions about Hill Harper, digging for information, trying to uncover anything that could give him back some sense of control. He sent warnings through their mutual circle, subtle reminders that he wasn't the type of man to be crossed. But it wasn't about fixing things. MARTell wasn't interested in healing. He wanted to tear everything down piece by piece, if only to prove he still had power. For a man like MARTell, the hardest part wasn't the thought of Melody moving on, or even the idea of her leaning on someone else. It was the feeling of losing the His pride, his ego, his entire sense of self depended on being the one in charge. And now, for the first time, he wasn't. Meanwhile, Hill Harper stayed completely silent. That silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Hill wasn't about to get dragged into MARTell's storm of emotions. He knew that stepping in would only feed the fire. By choosing distance, he positioned himself as calm, composed, and untouchable. And in some strange way, that silence hurt MARTell more than any direct response ever could. Because Hill wasn't arguing. He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't reacting at all. He was simply existing, respected, admired, and steady. And that contrast, MARTell's chaos against Hill's calm, made the situation even more unbearable for him. The fallout from all of this spread quickly. People who once shared dinners, laughed at group chats, and celebrated milestones together started pulling away. Friends didn't know what to say. Some tried to remain neutral, but in a conflict this messy, neutrality felt like betrayal. Eyes turned down at events. Conversations froze when MARTell walked into the room. The whole circle was suffocating under the tension. Everyone was waiting to see who would speak first, who would finally crack. But no one did. What followed was a cold war, silent but heavy, stretching further with each passing day. And then came the breaking point. A private voice note of MARTell leaked to the public. It wasn't polished. It wasn't strategic. It was raw emotion, unfiltered pain. In that message, he let his heart bleed. He spoke about how he had given everything to people who treated him like he was disposable. He talked about how he built foundations that others now stood on like stages, dancing as if they had created them themselves.